Well, hello, educator friends, and welcome to the School Life series. I'm your host, Ross Braun, and I am so glad that you are here today. So, if you have just now joined the School Life series for the very first time, I want to give you a little background about who we are, what we do, and what this platform is all about. So, this podcast was created, gosh, almost 3 years ago now for educators all across the country, the people that are doing their real work inside schools every single day. And each episode, we feature real educators with real stories and real strategies for you to help you not only survive the work that you're doing, but also stay connected and remind you why you became an educator in the first place. So each episode is intentionally designed to bring you fresh strategies, fresh ideas, and new perspectives, allowing you to grow in your profession, learning from the absolute best educators all across the country. So we're entering into season 4 now. And if you haven't gone back, I highly suggest go back and look at the first 3 seasons. Find an episode or 2 episodes or listen to the entire 3 seasons. And I promise you, you will be a better educator and a better human being after listening to those. And so many of them, you're going to be ready to run through a brick wall. So season 4 is no different. The mission is the same, but season 4 is all about sustaining educators, strengthening our schools, and staying human in this profession. And we have some incredible educators already lined up, ready to pour into you and to educators all across the country. So I'm so excited to kick off this season with today's special guest, Danny Steele. Let's do it. Today, we are kicking off season 4 of the School Life series, and I am thrilled to be joined by the one and only Danny Steele. I mean, seriously, we are in the presence of true greatness here. So if you don't happen to know Danny, let me just give you a little insight of how special it is to have him as a guest. Dr. Danny Steele gave 31 years of his life to education as a principal, assistant principal, teacher, coach, and assistant professor. He's the author of 6 books. That's right, 6 books. He was an Alabama Principal of the Year, Assistant Principal of the Year. Truly, I mean, he's impacted tens, if not hundreds of thousands of young lives, teachers, principals, including me. My first couple years as principal, I lean on Danny's work heavily, along with several other people. But Danny, you were really a go-to. So you're a maverick in education, and now you're retired. And what is he doing with his life? He's continuing to pour into educators all across the country. And that's right. He's joining us today on the School Life series. So Danny, thank you again so much for being here on the School Life series.
Ross, that was a very, very gracious introduction. So I appreciate it. You're very kind. Yeah, I think it was maybe a mistake to start telling people I'd retired because I still feel like I'm getting after it pretty hard. But yeah, I've had the privilege in my career of being around some amazing educators and hearing some amazing educators, teachers, school leaders, and they've inspired me along the way. And I'm excited to still get to connect with people and add value however I can because I never get tired of talking about the school life.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you. And I'm excited for this conversation because that's it right there. Like your passion is just helping others and supporting others. And that's what this School Life series is all about. So before we get into today's topic, I like to just talk to you about you and your life and your career. And we start always with just the human side because I think it's important for teachers and educators to hear like you are humans first. So a lot of times we feel like this work is all consuming our life, but we have to remember, who we are personally. And so tell us a little bit about who you are personally, Dan.
Well, I was originally born in Philadelphia, PA, but I've lived most of my life in the South. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama now. I have a wife and 3 kids. My oldest son and his wife had a little baby girl about 15 months ago. So I'm officially a pops.
Yeah, cool.
And we got to see Gracie this past weekend, so that was fun. Yeah, I enjoyed teaching history and coaching, and then got into administration and was a school building administrator for 22 years. My wife is a pediatric physical therapist, and so that's been our life, is helping kids.
Yeah, I love
And then
that.
I will add, as an administrator, it's kind of more about sometimes helping adults. That was really kind of a big lesson for me. When you get into administration, is it's really about, you still obviously love the kids and you're making decisions about what's right for kids, but it's about supporting the adults.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. I think I say that a lot. That like one thing that I was not prepared for when I stepped into the principal seat was the adults, right? And there's no graduate courses that prepare you for that portion of the job. And I think it's easy. You know, it was for me. It was easy to look at it as a negative thing at first. Like, gosh, they're causing all this extra work for me and problems. But then it took a couple experiences where I was really able to be there for a couple, educators and teachers in our building, for me to realize the role and the importance that I have in their lives and the adults in the building. Because we're kids first. We're educators. We have those kids' hearts, but when you step into leadership, it's all about um, the kids, but also the adults and building. You're right.
Yep.
So you kind of told us already about your education career and where you started, and I'll ask you this question: in your education career, what was your favorite role?
Well, I mean, I loved being I loved the engagement with students in a classroom. I taught ninth and 10th grade history, and I loved class discussions. I loved being silly with kids. But most of my career, 22 years, was a school building administrator, and the last 12 years as a principal. So, that's probably that was kind of probably a my highlight is being able to lead faculties and schools for 12 years. You know, connecting with kids, connecting with teachers, like none of that ever gets old. So I'm blessed to have had 31 years where I really got to um, just be around some really neat kids and some really dynamic, passionate educators.
I love that. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. I get that question now. What do you miss most about being a principal? And I tell everybody it's greeting kids in the mornings when they got off the bus, high five, a fist bump, and a good morning. That was my absolute favorite part of the job is, and that's connecting with students and adults. And so, next question for you: when we talk about your career and both your personal life, who can you say has just been, or a couple people maybe, have just been huge influences on you both personally and professionally?
Well, professionally, kind of the role model for me was, and kind of my hero was Todd Whitaker, who has just written lots of books, What Great Teachers Do Differently, What Great Principals Do Differently. That had a big impact on me. And then when I had the crazy good fortune of him reaching out to me to write a couple books, that kind of really helped. It allowed my career to sort of take on a new angle with writing and speaking, and so he has been a huge resource for me and source of inspiration. And both personally and professionally, my older brother David has uh, has always been my closest friend, my mentor, and every for 31 years as an educator, he was with me every step of the journey through emails, phone calls, texts,
That's cool.
and he I would tell him a story early on teaching. I was in my 20s, mid-20s, and I would tell him stories about stuff that was happening with our students, and he'd say, "Danny, hold on to that story. It'll be something in one of your books one day." And I'm like, "Dude, what are you talking about? I'm not writing any
Oh,
books."
so this was way before the first book, right?
And then later on as an assistant principal and principal, he's like, "Danny, remember this because one day when you're speaking or a consultant, you're gonna wanna talk about this." I'm like, "David, what are you talking about?" So, like that he believed I could do things before they were even pipe dreams for me.
Wow, that's cool.
So, his level of support and encouragement is I just can't overstate the significance of that.
Love that. It gives me a little chills hearing that story. That's so good. I do have a question for you about that leading into it. I talk to a lot of authors and speakers and just, in the community that I'm in. And they always talk about different ways that they get their ideas down. Do you have a go to? Like some people use journaling. I put it in my notes in my phone because I get ideas all times of the day. Is there any way that you get those ideas and stick them down besides, telling your brother?
Yeah, a lot of times I would early on, I would write notes, like, on a legal pad, then I started keeping Google Docs where I would type stuff, and I learned to try to keep up with stories and things that happened that inspired me or that were funny or poignant. So that's kind of how it is now, is I just try to keep a running Google Doc of things. And I wish, Ross, that I had I had been a diligent journaler early in my career, because I would just have books and books. Because, there's so many things, so many amazing moments that as educators we experience every day and we forget them. They're gone. And so there's just countless meaningful things that I've experienced that I've forgotten. So
Yeah, forgotten
wish I
or forgot
I wish I
at
had been
least.
more diligent about taking notes.
Yeah, yeah, you or at least you forget the details. You remember that, something, but you can't remember the details of it. So that's good. There are a lot of aspiring, I think, authors and speakers that listen to the School Life series. That's great advice for
The
them.
other thing I'd say is, over the years, I've started posting some of the stuff on social media, and then that kind of preserves it. It memorializes it, and then, like, if it's a story I shared on Facebook, then every year it pops up as a memory. Or starting a blog. That's an easy way to start small. Is just write a couple paragraph blog, and then that's there forever, and it reminds you. And later it might, like, some of the blog posts that I did 8 years ago ended up becoming like the basis for a chapter. Blogging is a great thing as well.
Cool. Well, thank you. So here's a great lead into this next question. Let's see if there's anything in your career that you haven't forgot. So this question is there anything throughout your 31 years? I'm sure there's books of it, like you said, but just one thing that sticks out as like I wouldn't believe this happened to me moment. One that
So
comes up top of your head.
As an assistant principal at Tarrant High School in Birmingham, I had a choir teacher come to me at the end of school totally distraught. She was in tears, and she said, "I went out to my car and the front bumper was all busted up, dented in." Like, and so I tried to help her think through what could have happened. And she said, "Well, earlier in choir, we were taking pictures, and so I asked, uh, 2 of my ninth grade students, these 2 girls, I said, "My earrings that I need are on my front console. Here's my keys to my Suburban. Can you go get those?" And they showed up like 10 minutes later with the earrings, and she didn't think another thing about it. I went out and looked at the fender, and there was some orange paint on the bumper. And I went and looked at the video surveillance of the parking lot, and it was clear that they had driven out. And they came back to her. She said they came back and gave me a Coke, a cold Coke, but because I had asked for something to drink when they were out, but we only had Pepsi machines in the building. And so I thought they were gone for 10 minutes. They came back with a cold Coke. They had to have gone to a convenience store. You know what? Some of those convenience stores have uh, little posts that keep you from going up on the sidewalk. So I drive to this convenience store that's 5 minutes away, and sure enough, there's orange posts to keep you from going on the sidewalk, which matches the orange paint on her bumper. I went into the store clerk and said, "Do you happen to remember if anybody might have hit this earlier today?" And he's like, "It shook the whole store. It cracked my sidewalk." So so I had these 2 ninth grade girls that, like, stole the teacher's car, drove to a convenience store, ran into the post in the parking lot, and then came back and to class and gave her a cold drink like nothing had happened. I like I
And at ninth grade, I'm guessing they didn't even have a license.
No, no. They could have been arrested for stealing a car, hit and run, driving without a license. And the crazy thing is these were not like bad. I wouldn't have thought of them as bad kids.
Yeah, right? They weren't in your office frequent flyers.
Yeah,
That
it's
is
craziness.
yeah, it
Crazy.
amazes me the things that kids do and, rationalize in their head, and they thought they were getting her a cold drink, I'm
Yeah.
sure, doing her a favor. That's a good one. That might top it of the stories I've heard, on these episodes, Danny. That's a good one. I'm sure people appreciate that. So, one more question, and a little more serious note, before we get into today's topic is what is something about education that you wish more people understood?
I guess this will be sort of directed to leaders. There's an adage with teaching that everyone is familiar with, that the kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them as your teacher. And that resonates with teachers, and I definitely feel like that's the case. Making those connections with kids matters. What I think is important for school leaders is to realize that that exact same concept applies to leadership. The teachers don't care about your PhD in curriculum and instruction. They don't care how highly qualified you are as a school leader. If the teachers don't know you've got their back in a tough parent conference, then it really doesn't matter. So it's just that relationship piece. And so I mean, like, that's not novel. That's not like a hot take necessarily, but like, we talked about the fact that we get into education for kids to win over kids. As an administrator, your new mission is to win over the adults.
Yeah.
And that
Boom.
doesn't come natural to me. I learned that lesson the hard way after 3 years as an AP. And so being a champion for the teachers, the adults, the faculty, custodians, CNP workers, SRO, bookkeeper, registrar, the school nurse, those adults in the building, they're the ones that you become a champion for when you're a school leader.
Wow. Drop the mic. Episode is over. That's it. That is gold right there, Danny. And like you said, for a lot of people, they were like, well, duh, right? Like it's not something brand new, but that's a reminder, I think, that every leader needs to hear because it's so easy to get away from that. And it's so easy to say, I want to be there for the kids, but you got to go here. And I think, too, we talk about, speakers and authors, we're connecting with adults now and we're hoping that the impact goes straight to the kids. It's a funnel. The impact is a funnel. I got into education, I'm sure you did, to make an impact on kids, on young males that needed a male influence in their lives. As that impact grew and grew, I realized how many kids I can impact by speaking to a room of 400 adults. Because I look at those adults as not individual adults, as a classroom of 25 students or a building of 500 students. I mean, that's it right there. So all right, we are gonna guess. I guess we'll continue on through the episode. We could have ended it right there, but today's topic is what season 4 is going to be all about. And we're gonna be loaded with so many guests on similar topics, but Danny is kicking us off right. So Danny and I had a casual Zoom call few months ago, and Danny mentioned a topic to me, and I was like, wow, that is great. And I want to hear more about it. And then when we started planning out the School Life Series season 4, this is it. And so the topic is passion drift. And I'm gonna let Danny dive into it and share what it's all about. But I know this is something that all of our listeners want to hear and they need to hear. So Danny, take it away. What is passion drift?
Well, I appreciate you teeing me up like that. This is the first school day of February, and so it does not get any more timely because month can be a struggle for educators in the school building. As educators, we get into education to change lives. We want to make a difference, and everyone gets in very optimistic and they're idealistic. But then there can be a reality check. Like, it's hard, right? There's lots of papers to grade. That doesn't stop. Some of the parents have lost their mind, and you're constantly having to respond in the emails to things that don't even seem to make sense. There's funding issues, and then there becomes a polarized political climate, and there's just so much outside noise, and it can start to steal some of your joy, some of your spark. Your passion can begin to drift a little bit. And so what I love to do when I speak to educators is to try to help them overcome that passion drift, to find that joy, to get that edge back, that energy, that momentum, because the purpose that you began your career with, it still holds up.
Mhm.
We're still in it to change lives. And there's kids that still need us. And if you're a school leader, there's adults in the building that need you.
Yep.
And so for me, that's what it means, is to sort of push back on that passion drift and to keep your edge as an educator.
Gosh, that's so good. I love that. And everybody goes through it at some point. Like you said,
Yeah.
reality sets in, and whether it's your third year or some people hang on to it long enough and it's their 15th year, you're going to go through it at some point. And I want to add something to what you said there too, Danny, as a school leader. You talked about adults. I think sometimes we're there for the parents. I remember having parents come into my office and just unloading on everything that didn't have to be about their student. And I realized that their frustration about the teacher or the situation wasn't necessarily the teacher or the situation, it was their life. And they
Yeah.
didn't have anybody in their life that they could talk to. And in that 30 minutes, I became their counselor, just somebody that
Yeah.
would listen to them. And so we never know what it's going to be and what our impact looks like. And so going back to passion drift, and I don't want to get too much into passion drift because I want schools to bring you to them and I want them to go listen to you at a conference or whatever it may be. But a couple questions. So one question is, what mistakes do you see, teachers and leaders making that gets them to that point where their passion's drifting?
I think one big thing is, like, the term light bulb moment, right? It's the proverbial, the quintessential rewarding moment in a classroom for a teacher when the kid's eyes light up because they get the lesson. And the teacher says, "Yes, I made a difference with that kid." And it's connected to the lesson, right? And so as a young administrator, I didn't have an early struggle for me is I no longer had the light bulb moments because I'm not teaching those kids in the classroom. So I'm not having some of that same validation and professional gratification. What was significant for me in my career is when I learned to redefine my light bulb moments. Uh, as a school leader, a light bulb moment for me is if I can help a teacher with a challenging student, if I can help support a teacher in a tough parent conference, if I can help them write it through a dicey email chain, if I can help a teacher move their filing cabinet across the room because they can't get a hold of a custodian, like
Yeah.
that's rewarding for me. I'm like, yeah, I'm making a difference right
Yeah.
here. And if you have your head on a swivel, those light bulb moments are all around. And as a teacher, there are light bulb moments that are not necessarily connected to the lesson. It's giving a kid a fist bump when they come into your class and the kid's eyes, and the smile, just being kind to people around you. That can change the trajectory of their bad day.
Yes.
So I think it's easy sometimes to sell ourselves short. And so that would be the mistake is kind of not being open-minded enough about what light bulb moments truly are and that the potential to impact the lives of those around us in a positive way, they are everywhere. They're all around us if we have our head on a swivel.
That's good. That's great stuff. I mean, it, I think I hear this so many times. I'm just a teacher. I'm just a principal. No, you're changing lives day in and day out. And if we're looking at the small moments and celebrating the small wins, it's going to be a lot easier for us to see the difference that we're making. It's good stuff. And so the School Life series, I always, kind of pride this whole series on giving listeners and educators practical strategies. So, you kind of gave us one there and talking about the mistake. What are a couple of other practical strategies that educators, teachers, and leaders can use day in and day out that is going to prevent the passion drift, or at least keep it from creeping in on us?
An activity that I did with our faculty at the beginning of the school year at one of my schools is I passed out a copy of the Hippocratic Oath, which is the oath that physicians take when they become doctors about what their commitments are to their patients and to their colleagues. And I asked them to underline the phrases or the sentiments in that oath that resonated with them as educators. And then we talked about it. And there's a line in there in the Hippocratic Oath that says, "I do not treat a fever chart or a cancerous growth, but a sick human being." And as educators, we think, I don't teach second grade language arts. I teach kids. And so we talked about that as a staff. And then I said, think about what would be in your oath as an educator. What are your commitments at the core to your students, to their parents, to your colleagues? And then I asked them to write their own oath. And I said, like, I don't care how long, I don't care the format, it doesn't have to be in complete sentences. All I ask is that you don't use Chat GPT or Google or whatever, is
Yeah.
make it meaningful to you. And we did it. And I asked them to post it outside their door or they could put it on their website. And I wrote my own principal's oath about what I was committed to as their leader. And when you actually put it in writing and show others that there's some accountability there. But the significance is you're articulating the things that you really care about. And when the going gets rough, when your passion starts to drift, when there's a lot of outside noise, that oath helps you recall and be mindful of the things that you really care about, your core values, and so I think that can be a really helpful thing.
That's a good one. That's really good. I might have to use that sometime. I'm in a very difficult school that, we need to remind ourselves what our core values are. One activity I always do with staff is going back and talking about our why we went into education, or
Yeah.
that was again 3 years ago or 25 years ago. It's easy to forget it. Like you said, when reality sets in and we realize we're not gonna, put up 10 new bulletin boards a year. Whenever that time comes, reality sets in, and that's when the passion drift
I
happens.
think another thing that could be helpful for me, this is part of kind of overcoming passion drift. It's just learning the stories of the people around you. If as a teacher, if you've got students that are getting on your last nerve, take the time to have a conversation with them when you're not angry and ask them about their life, what they're dealing with at home, what their struggles are, what they're excited about. As a school leader, I need to know the stories of my staff, what their home life is, what they're dealing with. And because what people show us oftentimes when we cross paths in the hallway, it's just the superficial. It's what they're projecting. And maybe that rubs us the wrong way, but we don't know what it is that's going on with them that leads to that sort of superficial presentation that we're seeing. So, taking time to learn people's stories, I think, can go a long way
That's good. And it takes intentionality. That's a word I use
for
a
sure.
lot. It's not for some people it comes more natural for sure, but that type of work, those learning stories, it just takes intentional time. And so I will say this too, and for the teachers that are listening, if you are struggling with a student, and you just like, I just can't get to them, they're, the behaviors are out of control, I don't know what it is, just like Danny said, take some time to learn their story. And then usually I think in our situation, Danny, the feedback we get is I don't have enough time in the day to do that. And so my challenge for you, if you're a teacher and you're at that point, you're trying to learn a story, you're trying to get to know a student, and you just don't know when that's going to take place. Go to your assistant principal, your principal, and say, will you cover my class for 5 or 10 minutes so I can get to know this student more? And I guarantee you, your principal, your assistant principal, it's probably going to be them. If not, they are going to find someone to make that happen for you, right? Because there's a lot of benefits for us. One, we know you're making the connections, getting to know the student. And two, we know that if you do put this time in, if I cover your class for 5 or 10 minutes a couple times a week, then I'm not going to have Johnny in my office for 3 hours a week because of the behaviors. He's not throwing the desk across your classroom.
Yeah.
And so, I would anytime that would happen, I would offer it. But if your principal, your assistant principal is not offering it, just reach out and say, hey, can you cover my class while I spend some, intentional time getting to know this student?
As an administrator, that would absolutely fire me up.
Yeah.
I can't I mean, administrators know that that's where magic happens when the other adults in the building take time to make connections. And oftentimes it's most strategic when it's outside of the context of the classroom. The students' guards can come down a little bit and be a bit more vulnerable. It's also important for the adults to be vulnerable. Sometimes with the kids, I mean, it's sometimes counterintuitive that there can be strength in vulnerability, but that anytime we're vulnerable, that makes us more human.
Mm,
And and when we're more human, we're more relatable. Connections come easier. So don't underestimate the value of vulnerability.
good. Thank you. So I got a couple more questions as we close, but is there anything you want to give our listeners regarding passion drift before we move on? Wrap it
No,
up.
just, keep your head on a swivel for those light bulb moments because they're all around and you make an impact oftentimes when you don't even know it. Being an educator can be like planting seeds. We don't always get to see the harvest, but to all your listeners out there, keep planting the seeds because the harvest will come even if you don't see it. You are making an impact.
So that was I was asked what advice you give educators. Boom, you nailed it. I didn't have to ask the question. That's perfect there. What advice would you give to students today? Education in a school setting in 2026, especially in I think middle school, high school setting, it's not easy for kids. There's a lot of factors that that contribute to that. So, what advice do you give students?
I told you about the impact my brother has had on me, and he's raising 2 kids, ages 12 and 14, and they're very intentional. He and his wife, they're very intentional about how they parent the kids. And early on, they sort of adopted 3 family values, and they're so ingrained in that family and the decisions they make. My brother actually had them tattooed on his arm. The 3 values are curiosity, kindness, and honesty. And so my advice to young people is to be curious, always ask questions, be honest, and always be kind. Like, if you can do those 3 things, you will be a great human.
Yeah, isn't it? I mean, it sounds so simple and easy, and it's yet it's so hard, especially for young adults, as they're maneuvering through life and then figuring out who they're going to be. Well, it's hard for adults as well sometimes, but just holding on to those core values can have so much positive impact on your life. So, Danny, as we wrap it up, you have given so much wisdom and advice to educators on this episode. I mean, it's just jam packed. I can't wait to get this out to the world. But if you could leave our listeners with just one final thought or one final reminder, like you said, it's February. This is the most difficult month of the school year, the season of the school year. What are you going to leave them with?
I would just reiterate what I said earlier. The reason you got into the profession, the reason you became an educator, that purpose still holds up. Nothing's changed. You're still making an impact, and you can still change the world.
Great advice. This was just a powerful conversation. Thank you again so much for joining me and agreeing to come on and just pour in to others. That's what this work is all about, and sharing your story and just your heart for this work. And so, for our listeners, I know you loved it. I know you love Danny. Who doesn't love Danny Steele? But if you haven't connected with him yet, Danny, how can our listeners connect with you?
Yeah, my email is danny@steelethoughts.com, and my social media handle is @steelethoughts, and my website is steelethoughts.com. I certainly would love to connect. I never get tired of talking about school life and the work that educators do. So, Ross, I appreciate the way you amplify the voice of educators and the way you create opportunities for meaningful conversation around the great work that educators do. So I appreciate you having me on. It's really been an honor to be with you.
And thanks, Danny. And I appreciate those words. So, as always, to our listeners, thank you for being a part of the school life community. If there is a guest that you want to hear on season 4, reach out. Let me know if there's a specific topic, something you're going through right now. You're like, I need help. I'm going to find somebody that can help you through that. So, we will cover it. Just reach out, let us know. And until next time, keep doing the great work, keep choosing positivity, and keep being great today.